There's something almost magical about the way an owl's call cuts through the silence of the night, or how a lone wolf seems to carry the weight of ancient wisdom in its gaze. Long before science could explain the natural world, our ancestors looked to animals not just as fellow creatures, but as living keys to the divine. They believed every flutter of a wing, every growl in the dark, was a message from something far greater, a whisper from the spirit world itself. This wasn't just superstition, it was a sacred language woven into the very fabric of ancient cultures. From the temples of Egypt, where cats were worshipped as vessels of the goddess Bastet, to the vast plains where Native American tribes sought visions through the buffalo and eagle, animals were more than mere symbols. They were guides, protectors, and even gods. Think about it. Why would so many civilizations, separated by oceans and centuries, share this deep reverence for creatures great and small? Perhaps it's because animals embody qualities we've always longed to understand: strength, intuition, a connection to realms beyond our own. The Egyptians saw the scarab beetle rolling its dung ball as a mirror of the sun's journey across the sky, a tiny testament to the cycles of life and rebirth. The Celts believed stags carried the wisdom of the forest, their antlers reaching like branches into the unseen. Even today, when a raven appears unexpectedly or a deer crosses your path, doesn't it feel like more than coincidence? That tingling sense of meaning, it's an echo of something ancient, something we've forgotten but still feel in our bones. This video is an invitation to step into that forgotten world, where the line between beast and spirit was blurred, and every animal had a story to tell. We'll walk the sacred grounds where wolves were seen as teachers, snakes as healers, and birds as messengers of the gods. Together, we'll unravel the mysteries of rituals that honored these creatures, decode the symbols hidden in ancient art, and ask what these bonds might still teach us in a modern world that's lost touch with their magic. So settle in, because this isn't just a history lesson. It's a journey back to a time when the earth spoke through feathers and fur, and the sacred was as close as the next paw print in the dirt. In Greek mythology, the owl wasn't just a bird. It was the living embodiment of Athena's piercing insight, its wide eyes reflecting knowledge no human could fully grasp. The Norse didn't merely tell stories about ravens. They believed Odin's two companions, Hugin and Munin, flew across the 9 worlds each dawn, returning to whisper secrets into the god's ear. These weren't casual metaphors. Ancient people saw animals as threads connecting the human and divine, woven into the very fabric of their understanding of existence. Consider the Hindu reverence for elephants, where Ganesha's trunk symbolizes the ability to overcome obstacles, or the Chinese dragon, a celestial being of rain and prosperity that bore little resemblance to the fire-breathing monsters of Western tales. Each culture projected its deepest values onto creatures, transforming them into mirrors of human hopes and fears. The Aztecs took this further, believing the jaguar was so sacred it could move between the physical and spirit worlds, its spotted coat resembling the night sky. When Egyptian priests placed a cat statue beside a mummy, they weren't just honoring Bastet, they were ensuring the deceased had a guide through the underworld's treacherous paths. Even in stories where animals seem like mere servants to gods, like Zeus transforming into a swan or bull, there's a profound truth. Divinity chose fur and feathers as its preferred disguises. Why? Because animals represented raw, unfiltered nature, something the gods themselves respected. These myths reveal a universal truth our ancestors understood instinctively. Animals don't just share our world, they interpret it for us. The Cherokee still speak of Actina, a horned serpent whose scales hold cosmic knowledge, while West African traditions describe the spider Anansi weaving wisdom into every web. Modern science might dismiss these as fantasies, but their persistence across continents suggests something deeper. When every culture independently links dolphins to salvation, wolves to destruction, and eagles to enlightenment, perhaps they're tapping into an ancient language we've forgotten, one where pelts and paws are the alphabet. What's truly fascinating is how these animal myths weren't static. As civilizations evolved, so did their creatures. Early Mesopotamian lion goddesses softened into protective feline deities in later cultures. The Celtic boar, once a symbol of war, became associated with harvests in Christianized folklore. This adaptability proves these weren't just superstitions, but living relationships, ways for humans to process change while keeping one foot in the natural world. Even today, when we call someone wise as an owl or brave as a lion, we're unknowingly reciting prayers from a time when the border between zoo and temple didn't exist. To understand why ancient Egyptians wrapped their gods in fur and feathers, look no further than the Nile itself, a pulsing lifeline where crocodiles basked on muddy banks and ibises waded through reeds. Here, animals weren't just part of the landscape, they were the heartbeat of creation. Take Bastet, whose gentle purr belied her fierce protective power. Egyptians didn't just admire cats for hunting vermin. They saw in them the duality of nature, nurturing yet deadly, domestic yet wild. When a mother cat moved her kittens, it mirrored Isis hiding Horus from Set. Even a cat's eyes, glowing in lamplight, seemed to hold the sun's fire, linking them to Ra's daily rebirth. Then there was Anubis, his jackal form born from keen observation. Egyptians noticed how these scavengers prowled desert edges where graves were dug, their noses leading them unerringly to the dead. Instead of fearing them, they saw divine purpose. If jackals knew death's scent, surely they could guide souls safely through it. This wasn't mere symbolism, it was practical theology. Anubis didn't just represent the afterlife. His animal instincts actively shaped the journey there, weighing hearts against Mat's feather with jackal-like precision. But the deepest truth lies in the hybrids. Horus' falcon head wasn't just a mask, it gave him the sky's vantage point, his piercing gaze missing nothing, just as a raptor spots prey from impossible heights. Thoth's ibis beak curved like the crescent moon he measured, linking the bird's probing mud to divine wisdom. Even chaotic Set took the form of the mysterious Set animal, a creature scholars still debate, with curved snout and forked tail, embodying the untamable storms of the desert. These connections went beyond art. Live animals were kept in temple precincts as divine avatars. At Saqqara, millions of mummified ibises were buried in labyrinthine catacombs, each bundle a prayer to Thoth. When a sacred bull died, all Egypt mourned, for it carried the essence of Ptah. This wasn't blind worship, it was a dialogue. By studying how crocodiles guarded their young, Sobek's devotees learned about fierce parental love. Watching scarabs push dung balls became a lesson in perseverance, the beetle's daily grind mirroring Khepri rolling the sun across the sky. What modern minds might dismiss as primitive idolatry was actually profound ecology. The Egyptians didn't separate the sacred from the scientific. A hippopotamus could be both Taweret the protector and a lesson in riverine balance. Their gods wore animal skins not because they lacked imagination, but because they saw creation as an interconnected web, one where feathers, scales, and whispers of the divine were woven from the same thread. For the Lakota people, the wolf wasn't just a symbol of loyalty, it was a teacher showing how to move through life with both independence and deep connection to the pack. Tribes across North America didn't see animals as separate from humanity. They were relatives, each with lessons etched into their very existence. Picture a young warrior preparing for his vision quest, spending days alone in the wilderness, waiting for an animal to appear in dreams or signs. When an eagle circled overhead or a bear crossed his path, it wasn't random. It was an invitation to carry that creature's wisdom into his life, to let its strengths guide his own. The Hopi tell of Spider Grandmother, who wove the world into being with her silken threads, teaching that creation itself is an act of patience and intricate care. The Cherokee still honor the Octina, a serpent whose horns hold secrets of the earth, reminding us that even feared creatures have gifts to offer. These stories weren't just told around fires for entertainment, they were maps for living. When the Haida carved ravens into towering totem poles, they weren't decorating, they were declaring lineage, history, and the raven's role as both trickster and bringer of light. Daily life mirrored this reverence. Hunters spoke prayers of gratitude before taking a deer's life, acknowledging the sacrifice. Women weaving baskets might mimic the patterns of turtle shells, weaving protection into every strand. Even children's games taught them to move like foxes or watch like owls, blending play with profound respect. This wasn't symbolism, it was survival. By observing how bears healed themselves with herbs, tribes learned medicine. Watching beavers build dams revealed engineering. The natural world was the first classroom, and animals were the professors. What's striking is how these traditions persist. Modern Navajo runners still tie eagle feathers to their hair, not as decoration, but to carry the bird's swiftness and focus. Nez Perce fishermen whisper thanks to salmon returning upstream, recognizing their cyclical journey as a mirror of life's own rhythms. These practices whisper a truth our modern world often forgets. We aren't above nature, but part of it. When a tribal elder says, "The wolf is not our enemy, it is our mirror," they're pointing to something deeper than folklore. They're reminding us that every creature, from the tiniest ant to the mightiest bison, holds a piece of the puzzle, a lesson in balance, resilience, or community we're still learning to hear. Perhaps that's why these traditions feel so urgent today. In a time of climate crisis and disconnection, the old ways offer a compass. The Lakota phrase, "Mitakui Oyasin," all my relations, doesn't just include people. It embraces the four-legged, the winged, the rooted. It's an acknowledgement that harming the wolf or poisoning the river is an act of self-destruction. When a Tlingit artist carves an orca into a cedar mask, they're not preserving a myth. They're keeping alive a conversation that began millennia ago, one where humans listened as much as they spoke. So the next time you see a crow studying you from a fence post or feel the shadow of a hawk pass overhead, pause. These moments might be more than chance. They could be echoes of an ancient language, one where feathers and footprints were the alphabet, and every creature had a story to tell. The question isn't whether animals have wisdom to share, it's whether we're still willing to listen. The shaman's drumbeat wasn't just rhythm, it was a heartbeat syncing with the pulse of the unseen world, a bridge between the physical and the spirit realms where animals roamed as luminous guides. In the dense Amazon rainforest, a shaman might drink ayahuasca, his mind unfolding like wings as a jaguar's spirit emerged, its golden eyes revealing secrets of healing and hidden dangers. Meanwhile, in the frozen expanse of Siberia, a Tungus elder would don a reindeer hide cloak, its antlers stretching toward the sky as she channeled the reindeer's endurance to heal her tribe. These weren't hallucinations, they were journeys into a layered reality where animals were both teachers and guardians. What made creatures like the raven, bear, or serpent such powerful allies? It wasn't just their physical traits, but the roles they played in nature's theater. The jaguar's silent tread through the jungle mirrored the shaman's stealth in navigating spiritual dangers. Ravens, with their uncanny intelligence and ability to traverse land and sky, became messengers between worlds. Even the humble spider, weaving its web in the corner of a Mongolian yurt, was a living lesson in patience and interconnectedness. Shamans didn't choose these animals randomly. They recognized them as embodiments of universal forces, raw, unfiltered wisdom dressed in fur and feather. Rituals to summon these spirits were as varied as the cultures themselves. The Sami people of Scandinavia used rune drums painted with animal figures, the rhythmic tapping guiding their trance like a sleigh drawn by spirit reindeer. In North America, the Lakota sought visions through the sun dance, where dancers might glimpse the buffalo's sacrifice or the eagle's soaring perspective. Some Amazonian tribes still wear collars of jaguar teeth, not as trophies but as conduits for the predator's courage. Common to all was the belief that animals weren't just symbols, they were active participants in the ritual. A shaman didn't just pray to the bear spirit, they let its strength flow through them, their voice deepening into a growl as they diagnosed illness or foretold storms. Why do these traditions persist in the modern world? Perhaps because they answer a hunger science can't satisfy, the need to belong to something older and wilder than concrete and screens. Urban dwellers now flock to neo-shamanic workshops, not to escape reality, but to reconnect with a primal truth, that humans aren't separate from nature, but one thread in its vast web. When a corporate lawyer in Berlin dons a wolf mask during a guided journeying session, she's not playing make-believe, she's tapping into an ancient memory of pack loyalty and instinct. Modern psychologists even recognize the power of spirit-animal meditations, not as superstition, but as a way to access archetypal strengths buried in the collective unconscious. The endurance of these practices whispers a challenge to our fragmented world. A Shipibo shaman in Peru might sing an Icaro, a melody taught to him by a hummingbird spirit, to realign a patient's energy. Across the globe, a therapist in Tokyo uses animal-guided visualization to help clients find their inner resilience. Though separated by millennia and geography, both understand what our ancestors knew. Animals are more than neighbors on this planet. They're mirrors of our deepest selves, maps to territories within us we've forgotten how to navigate. The shaman's greatest lesson wasn't about controlling nature, but remembering how to listen to the wolf's howl, the crow's caw, and the silent wisdom padding beside us in the dark. In Hinduism, the sacred isn't confined to temples. It walks among us on four legs, swings from trees, and slithers through the grass. Take the cow, her gentle eyes reflecting centuries of devotion. She's not just an animal but Kamadhenu, the wish-fulfilling cow, whose milk nourishes both body and soul. To harm her is to strike at the heart of Dharma itself, for she embodies the earth's generosity. Yet this reverence isn't blind worship. The cow's ability to transform grass into life-sustaining milk mirrors the Hindu ideal of selfless giving, a living lesson in how to nurture the world without exploitation. Then there's Hanuman, the monkey god whose devotion to Lord Rama transcends species. His tales aren't just myths, they're masterclasses in loyalty and courage. When he leaps across oceans to carry a mountain of healing herbs, it's not fantasy but a reminder that even the smallest creatures can move mountains with faith. Temples from the Himalayas to Tamil Nadu brim with his playful energy, where devotees offer bananas not just to a deity, but to the wild, untamed spirit of nature itself. But perhaps the most striking symbol is the cobra coiled around Shiva's neck, its flickering tongue a paradox of death and rebirth. In a single image, Hinduism captures nature's duality. The serpent that can kill with a bite also shields the god of destruction. Farmers across India leave offerings to Nagas, serpent spirits dwelling in anthills. knowing these creatures control the rains and pests that make or break harvests. This isn't superstition, it's an ancient ecological pact recognizing that even feared beings balance the web of life. What's profound is how these animal deities evolved alongside human needs. Ganesha's elephant head isn't just whimsical, it symbolizes wisdom and adaptability, qualities essential for overcoming obstacles. The peacock that carries Kartikya into battle wears its iridescent feathers like armor, teaching that beauty and strength aren't opposites. Even the humble rat, vehicle of Ganesha, gnaws through barriers just as devotion can chew through ignorance. Modern ecologists might call this biomimicry, but Hinduism framed it as theology. When a priest bathes a temple elephant, he's not just performing a ritual, he's acknowledging that divinity wears gray skin and trumpet calls. The festival of Nag Panchami, where villagers feed milk to snakes, isn't mere tradition. It's a centuries-old conservation practice, ensuring these predators thrive to control rodent populations. In a world now facing mass extinctions, these ancient bonds whisper a radical idea. What if protecting animals isn't just ethical, but sacred duty? The next time you see a cow ambling through Delhi traffic or monkeys squabbling on a temple wall, look closer. They're not intruders in human spaces, but living reminders of a truth Hinduism never forgot. The divine doesn't live above us. It walks beside us on all fours, on wings, on bellies, teaching, protecting, and demanding nothing more than our reverence in return. The Celts didn't just walk through forests, they spoke to them, and the trees answered through the rustle of antlers and the flash of silver scales. Picture a druid standing at the edge of a misty grove, watching a stag emerge from the trees. To him, this wasn't just an animal, it was a living bridge between worlds. With its crown of branching antlers, the stag embodied the Celtic ideal of sovereignty, not just kingship, but a sacred bond between ruler and land. Its ability to shed and regrow antlers mirrored the cycles of death and rebirth, a rhythm the Celts saw echoed in the turning of seasons and the rise and fall of kingdoms. Even the way stags led their herds through dense woodland became a metaphor for wise leadership, guiding without force. Then there was the salmon, its sleek body slicing through icy rivers. What made this fish so revered? The Celts believed salmon gained otherworldly wisdom by eating hazelnuts that fell into sacred pools, a direct link to the knowledge hidden in nature. In the tale of Fionn mac Cumhaill, it's not a scholar but a salmon that holds the secret of all wisdom, waiting to be unlocked by those patient enough to learn from it. This wasn't mere folklore, it was an acknowledgement that truth wasn't confined to human minds. The salmon's upstream journey, fighting against the current, became a lesson in perseverance and the pursuit of deeper understanding. These beliefs weren't confined to stories. Celtic artisans wove animal symbolism into every torque and brooch. A boar's bristling mane on a warrior's helmet wasn't just decoration, it was an invocation of ferocity and protection. Swans adorned ritual cauldrons, their graceful necks arching like the curve of the moon, symbolizing transformation as they moved between water and sky. Even the humble hare, with its darting speed, was etched onto shields as a guardian against stagnation. The Celts didn't just depict animals, they channeled their essence, believing that wearing their forms could summon their power. Rituals deepened this connection. During Beltane, cattle were driven between twin bonfires, the smoke cleansing them and ensuring fertility, a practice that blurred the line between practical husbandry and spiritual ceremony. Hunters left offerings to the spirits of deer before a chase, acknowledging the gift of life taken. The famous Gundestrup cauldron, with its intricate panels of stags and serpents, wasn't just a vessel, it was a portal, its imagery guiding initiates through layers of meaning. What's startling is how these ancient ideas mirror modern environmentalism. The Celts didn't have terms like biodiversity or ecosystem services, but their worldview hinged on balance. A river wasn't just water, it was the salmon's highway, the otter's playground, and the reflection of the sky, all interconnected. Today, as scientists warn of collapsing fisheries and vanishing forests, the Celtic perspective feels less like superstition and more like prophecy. Their reverence for the stag's habitat wasn't sentimental, it was survival. When contemporary conservationists speak of keystone species, they're echoing the Druidic understanding that losing one thread unravels the whole web. Perhaps that's why Celtic symbols endure. The stag still graces environmental logos, its antlers branching like neural pathways or river deltas. Salmon leap through modern poetry as emblems of ecological resilience. Even the Morrigan, the crow goddess who prophesied battles, finds new life in activists who see her as a harbinger of climate reckoning. The Celts may have vanished, but their animal allies whisper through time, urging us to listen not just to nature's beauty, but to its warnings. When a modern hiker spots a stag at dusk, it's more than a wildlife encounter. It's an invitation to remember that sovereignty isn't domination, but stewardship, and that wisdom, like the salmon's, often swims upstream. In the golden savannas where lions reign and along riverbanks where crocodiles bask, African traditions have long woven animals into the very fabric of spiritual and social life. Take the Zulu concept of isithunzi, the belief that every clan shares an unbreakable bond with a specific animal, its spirit woven into their ancestry like threads in a sacred tapestry. For some, it might be the lion, its roar echoing the strength expected of warriors. For others, the elephant with its matriarchal wisdom becomes a guiding force. These weren't arbitrary choices but deep spiritual partnerships where the animal's traits became a mirror for the clan's identity and values. The Maasai of East Africa took this further, seeing themselves not as masters of the land but as coexisting with wildlife in a delicate balance. Their legendary respect for lions wasn't just admiration, it was a covenant. Warriors proving their bravery by hunting a lion had to follow strict rituals, ensuring the act honored the animal's spirit rather than glorified its death. Even the way Maasai herders painted their cattle with ochre patterns mirrored the stripes of zebras, a subtle nod to blending human and wild realms. This wasn't superstition, it was ecological wisdom disguised as tradition, a way to maintain harmony in a world where survival depended on mutual respect. West African traditions reveal even deeper layers. The Akan people of Ghana revered the Sankofa bird, a mythical creature that looks backward while moving forward, a living lesson in learning from the past. The Yoruba saw the chameleon as a messenger of the gods, its color-shifting skin symbolizing adaptability in a changing world. And in the dense forests of Central Africa, Bantu tribes spoke of the leopard as a mediator between the living and the ancestors, its spotted coat resembling dappled sunlight through trees, a bridge between worlds. What's striking is how these beliefs translated into tangible conservation practices long before the term existed. Sacred groves were left untouched, serving as sanctuaries where animals thrived under spiritual protection. Hunters observed taboos against killing pregnant females or taking more than the community needed, not out of law but reverence. The Dogon people of Mali even structured their villages to mirror the celestial patterns of the fox's movements, blending cosmology with zoology in a way modern science is only beginning to appreciate. Today, as Africa faces poaching crises and habitat loss, these ancient practices offer unexpected solutions. In Zimbabwe, where the roan antelope was once hunted to near extinction, reviving the totemic traditions of the Shona people helped rebuild its population, not through fines, but by reigniting cultural pride in protecting their symbolic kin. Conservationists working with the Samburu have found that invoking the elephant's role as a grandmother teacher in folklore does more to deter poaching than patrols alone. It's proof that the old ways weren't just stories, they were blueprints for coexistence, written in paw prints and wing beats. Perhaps the most profound lesson lies in the Ubuntu philosophy. I am because we are extended beyond humans to all living things. When a Zulu elder says, "A person without their totem is a tree without roots," they're speaking to something deeper than tradition. They're reminding us that identity isn't just human history. It's the lion's courage, the crocodile's patience, the honey-eyed bird's call leading us to sweetness. In a world racing toward disconnection, these traditions whisper a radical idea. What if conservation isn't just about saving animals, but about remembering who we are in relation to them? When dawn broke over Tenochtitlan, the Aztecs didn't just see sunlight, they witnessed the divine hand of Huitzilopochtli, the hummingbird god, pushing back the darkness. But it wasn't only gods who shaped their world. Animals were the living threads connecting Earth to the heavens. The jaguar, its spotted coat mirroring the night sky, wasn't merely a predator. It was Tepeolotl, the heart of the mountain, a shape-shifting deity who prowled through dreams and volcanoes alike. To wear a jaguar pelt wasn't just a display of power. It was an act of sacred mimicry, allowing rulers to channel the beast's ferocity and stealth in both war and spiritual warfare. Equally revered was the Quetzal, its emerald feathers more precious than gold. The Maya saw in its iridescent plumage the very essence of Kukulkan, the feathered serpent whose coils held the secrets of wind and rain. Capturing a Quetzal was forbidden. Its freedom was a mirror of the soul's own longing to transcend earthly binds. When rulers adorned headdresses with its feathers, they weren't just showcasing wealth, they were wrapping themselves in the breath of the gods. Even the bird's death held meaning. Quetzals were said to perish if caged, a poignant lesson that true divinity could never be possessed. But Mesoamerica's animal wisdom wasn't limited to grandeur. The humble dog, known as Xoloitzcuintli, guided souls through Mictlan's 9 treacherous underworld rivers. Their hairless bodies, warm as living hearthstones, were buried alongside the dead as spiritual companions. Meanwhile, butterflies far from delicate ornaments were believed to carry the spirits of fallen warriors, their fluttering wings whispering battle cries as they danced among flowers. Omens revealed themselves in every rustle and cry. An eagle clutching a snake on a cactus wasn't just a political symbol, it was the literal fulfillment of a prophecy, directing the Aztecs to build their capital where they witnessed this sacred tableau. Priests meticulously recorded animal behavior as celestial messages. A screech owl's call at midnight might foretell doom, while the sudden appearance of a coyote could signal coming famine or fortune. The Aztec Tonalpohualli, or sacred calendar, assigned each day an animal guardian, blending fate and fauna into a single cosmic language. Nowhere was this bond more vivid than in the new fire ceremony, held once every 52 years. As constellations aligned, priests would extinguish all fires across the empire. Then, atop Mount Huaxtlan, they'd wait for the Pleiades to crest the horizon, a sign the world would endure another cycle. The moment the stars paused at zenith, a captive warrior's chest was slit open, and a ritual drill kindled new flames in his wound. This fire, carried by runners to every village, wasn't just practical, it was spiritually reborn through sacrifice, much like the mythical phoenix. Jaguar warriors clad in pelts stood guard during this precarious night, ensuring no malevolent forces disrupted the rebirth of time itself. What modern minds might dismiss as superstition was, for the Maya and Aztecs, a sophisticated ecological dialogue. Their zoo temples, like the one at Tepozteco dedicated to Omtochtli, the rabbit god, weren't just shrines, they were observatories where priests tracked animal migrations alongside stars, discerning patterns we'd now call climate science. The Maya even depicted bats as scribes in codices, their darting flight paths inspiring the intricate glyphs that recorded history. Today, as jaguars vanish from shrinking forests and quetzals cling to clouded mountains, these ancient practices resonate with eerie urgency. The Kayich Maya still performs ceremonies asking permission from animal spirits before hunts, a ritual that aligns with modern conservation ethics. Zoologists recently discovered that Aztec descriptions of fire dogs, likely ocelots or magueys, match behaviors now seen in species threatened by habitat loss. Perhaps these civilizations understood something we're relearning, that animals aren't just part of our world, they're its living scripture, pages written in paw prints and wing beats, waiting to be read anew. In ancient China, the 12 animals of the zodiac weren't just markers of time, they were mirrors held up to human nature, each creature reflecting virtues, flaws, and cosmic truths. The dragon, alone among the zodiac's beasts as a mythical creature, wasn't feared but revered as the ultimate symbol of transformation and imperial power. Unlike Western fire-breathing monsters, the Chinese dragon danced through rain clouds, its serpentine body embodying the life-giving rivers that nourished crops. Emperors draped themselves in dragon motifs not as conquerors, but as stewards of balance, channeling the creature's ability to bridge heaven and earth. Meanwhile, the tiger's fierce stripes represented raw courage, its image painted on city gates to ward off evil spirits, a reminder that strength, when harnessed rightly, could protect as fiercely as it could destroy. But the zodiac was just the beginning. Taoist sages saw deeper lessons in creatures beyond the celestial calendar. The crane, with its graceful flight and snowy plumage, became a living emblem of longevity and purity. Artists depicted immortals riding cranes into the heavens, their wings carrying not just bodies but souls toward transcendence. Similarly, the tortoise, with its slow, deliberate movements and shell etched like a celestial map, symbolized unshakable wisdom. Its image adorned temple floors where monks would meditate upon it, learning patience from a creature that carried the weight of the world on its back. Even the lowly cricket, celebrated in poetry and kept in golden cages, was believed to sing the songs of the earth itself, a tiny maestro conducting the symphony of the seasons. These beliefs didn't just inspire art, they shaped medicine and statecraft. Physicians prescribed tiger bone for strength, not as superstition, but because they saw the animal's vitality as medicine made flesh. Tortoise shells inscribed with oracle bone script became the earliest records of Chinese writing, proof that wisdom often hides in hard, unassuming places. The phoenix, though not part of the zodiac, governed the southern quadrant of imperial palaces, its presence ensuring harmony between ruler and ruled. Every creature, from the carp struggling upstream to the silkworm spinning its cocoon, held a parable. The carp's leap over the Dragon Gate waterfall symbolized perseverance rewarded with rebirth, while the silkworm's self-sacrifice taught that creation often demands dissolution. Confucian scholars took this further, weaving animal virtues into moral codes. The loyalty of geese, which mate for life, became a model for marital fidelity. Bats, far from omens of darkness, adorned robes and bowls because their name, fu, sounded like the word for good fortune. Even the rat, often reviled elsewhere, earned respect in Chinese lore for its ingenuity, having won its zodiac place by riding the ox's back in the legendary race decreed by the Jade Emperor. What's remarkable is how these symbols transcended class. Peasants and emperors alike sought the crane's blessing for long life. Farmers timed plantings by the swallow's return, while poets compared the cicadas molting to the soul's liberation from earthly ties. This wasn't mere folklore, it was a shared language, one where nature's rhythms dictated human rhythms. When a Ming dynasty painter brushed ink onto silk to capture a lone egret standing in a lotus pond, he wasn't just creating art, he was encoding a lesson in stillness amid chaos, a philosophy as vital to a scholar as to a rice farmer. Today, as neon zodiac signs glow in urban night markets and grandparents gift red envelopes stamped with animal motifs, these ancient bonds endure. Modern geneticists marvel at how accurately the zodiac's animal traits align with personality studies, while ecologists note how traditional respect for certain species inadvertently preserved habitats. The crane, now endangered, still graces wedding dresses as a symbol of fidelity, just as the tiger's dwindling roar echoes in New Year's parades. Perhaps these traditions persist because they answer a timeless hunger to see ourselves not as separate from nature, but as students of its endless wisdom. After all, in a world where the dragon still dances in festivals and the tortoise's shell still maps the stars, the sacred bond between animals and spirits isn't just history. It's a living conversation, one that asks us to listen not just with our ears, but with the same reverence that turned paw prints into poetry and feathers into philosophy. When an eagle circled counterclockwise over a Roman battlefield or a flock of swallows nested in a Greek temple, it wasn't just nature at work, it was the gods speaking. The ancient Greeks and Romans lived in a world where every rustle of leaves or sudden appearance of a fox carried divine weight. Take the sacred chickens of Rome carried by generals before battle. If they ate greedily from their feed, victory was assured. If they refused, disaster loomed. This might sound like superstition to modern ears, but for them, it was sophisticated theology. A belief that the gods embedded messages in the living world, using creatures as their interpreters. Bird omens, or auspices, were taken so seriously that Rome had an entire college of augurs trained to read the sky. The way an eagle folded its wings mid-flight, or whether crows gathered on the left or right side of a path could determine the fate of empires. But it wasn't just birds. The Etruscans, Rome's spiritual predecessors, practiced haruspicy, reading the livers of sacrificed sheep like cosmic maps. A lobe too large might warn of political betrayal, while a missing gallbladder signaled divine displeasure. Even wolves played their part. When a she-wolf nursed Romulus and Remus, she wasn't just a beast, she was a vessel of Mars' will, her milk a literal and spiritual nourishment for Rome's founders. Perhaps the most dramatic example unfolded in 390 BCE, when the sacred geese of Juno's temple raised an alarm as Gauls crept into Rome. Their honks weren't mere noise, they were the goddess's voice, rousing defenders to repel the invasion. This event wasn't just commemorated, it sanctified geese as eternal guardians in Roman consciousness. Meanwhile, in Greece, owls held Athena's wisdom in their unblinking eyes. An owl's sighting before battle was as good as a blessing carved in marble, while its absence could send armies retreating. What's fascinating is how these practices reveal a nuanced worldview. Animals weren't just passive signs, but active participants in divine communication. A snake slithering across a threshold wasn't random. It might be Asclepius offering healing or an ancestor returning in scaled form. The Romans even had a term for these moments, omena, meaning both omen and opportunity, suggesting that the natural and supernatural weren't separate realms but intertwined layers of reality. Modern science might dismiss entrail reading as primitive, but these rituals held deeper logic. By forcing leaders to pause and observe nature's patterns, augury prevented rash decisions. The randomness of bird flight ensured no single ruler could claim a monopoly on divine will, a checks and balances system feathered in mystery. Even the skepticism of some philosophers, like Cicero, questioning whether two chickens could really decide a console's fate, shows these weren't blind beliefs but debated ideas, as alive in their time as climate science is in ours. The legacy of these omens lingers in unexpected ways. When we say someone has a gut feeling or describe luck as the stars aligning, we're echoing an ancient truth that humans have always searched for meaning in the wild, whether in the stars above or the creatures at our feet. The next time a crow lands on your windowsill or your dog growls at empty air, consider this. Perhaps the old gods haven't fallen silent. Maybe we've just forgotten how to listen. In the fire-lit temples of ancient Persia, dogs weren't just companions, they were spiritual warriors, their barks believed to shatter the whispers of demons. Zoroastrianism, one of the world's oldest monotheistic religions, saw animals not as lesser beings but as allies in the cosmic battle between light and darkness. A dog's gaze held such power that its presence was required during death rituals, where it would stare into the eyes of the deceased to drive away corrupting spirits. This wasn't mere folklore, it was theology in motion. The sagdid, or glance of the dog, was a sacred rite believed to purify the soul's passage into the afterlife. Even today, Zoroastrian funerals in India's Parsi communities honor this tradition, a living thread connecting modern practice to ancient conviction. Cows, too, occupied a divine space in Persian spirituality. Their milk wasn't just nourishment but a symbol of Ahura Mazda's generosity, their gentle nature embodying the virtues of creation. Harming a cow was tantamount to striking at the fabric of order itself, a belief that echoes strikingly in Hindu reverence for cattle. Yet Zoroastrianism took this further, weaving animals into the very infrastructure of purity. Ritual spaces were cleansed with cow urine, not as a primitive act but as a symbolic purification, its ammonia content ironically aligning with modern disinfectant science. The Gomez ritual, where urine was mixed with water and sand, transformed mundane materials into sacred tools, blurring the line between the physical and the spiritual. What's fascinating is how these practices mirrored and sometimes intersected with other ancient faiths. The Egyptian goddess Bastet, depicted as a lioness or domestic cat, shared the Zoroastrian dog's role as a protector against unseen threats. In Vedic traditions, the cow's sanctity paralleled Persia's veneration, suggesting a shared Indo-Iranian root. Even the Chinvat bridge, the Zoroastrian crossing into the afterlife guarded by two dogs, finds echoes in Norse mythology, where the wolf Gama watches Hell's gates. These parallels hint at a universal human instinct to see animals as mediators between realms, their instincts and behaviors mapping onto our deepest existential questions. But Persia's animal spirituality wasn't just about reverence, it was about reciprocity. The Vendidad, a Zoroastrian text, mandated care for working dogs as rigorously as it condemned their mistreatment. A shepherd's dog was entitled to the same food as its human counterparts, and harming a pregnant canine carried penalties akin to harming a person. This ethic of mutual obligation extended to wildlife. Zoroastrian teachings forbade wanton hunting, framing nature as a sacred trust rather than a resource to exploit. Modern scholars often overlook how these ancient practices encoded ecological wisdom. By deeming certain animals sacred, Zoroastrianism effectively created early conservation zones. The Persian paradise gardens, with their enclosed pools attracting birds and deer, weren't just aesthetic wonders. They were microcosms of the harmonious world Ahura Mazda intended. Today, as biologists warn of biodiversity collapse, these traditions offer a provocative question. What if the old ways of seeing animals as kin rather than commodities held solutions we're only now beginning to rediscover? The next time a dog barks at nothing visible or a cow's calm eyes meet yours, Consider these encounters might be more than chance. They could be fleeting glimpses into a time when humanity didn't just share the earth with animals, but honored them as partners in the grand, unfolding story of existence. The serpent's sinuous form has slithered through human imagination since the dawn of time, its forked tongue whispering secrets to cultures oceans apart. In the frostbitten realms of Norse mythology, Jörmungandr wasn't just a monster. It was the living boundary of existence itself, its massive coils encircling Midgard like a cosmic Ouroboros. When it stirred, earthquakes shook the land. When it finally released its tail at Ragnarök, the cycle of destruction and rebirth began anew. Yet halfway across the world, Hindu scriptures described Anantashesha differently. This thousand-headed serpent didn't bring chaos but stability, its hoods forming a celestial canopy as Vishnu rested upon its coils between universes. How could one creature embody both apocalyptic fury and divine tranquility? The answer lies in the serpent's very biology. Its ability to shed its skin made it the ultimate symbol of regeneration, a creature that could die and be reborn before human eyes. The Aztecs understood this when they depicted Quetzalcoatl not just as a feathered serpent, but as the morning star Venus, whose cyclical disappearance and reappearance mirrored the snake's renewal. His dual nature wasn't contradictory, it was the point. As a feathered being, he ruled the sky. As a serpent, he mastered the earth. This blending of realms made him the patron of priests and kings, the giver of maize, and the architect of time itself through the sacred calendar. But serpents also represented dangerous wisdom. In West Africa, the rainbow serpent Ida Wedo controlled storms and fertility, its shimmering scales teaching that beauty and danger often coil together. Greek myths told of the healing god Asclepius, whose serpent-entwined staff remains medicine's symbol today, not because snakes were seen as unclean, but because their venom could both kill and cure. Even the biblical serpent in Eden, often vilified in later interpretations, originally represented forbidden knowledge rather than pure evil. This duality played out in rituals worldwide. Australian Aboriginal elders still trace serpentine songlines across the desert, mapping both geography and ancestral memory. In Nepal, the festival of Nag Panchami sees villagers paste snake images above doorways, not out of fear but gratitude for pest control and monsoon blessings. The Hopi people perform the snake dance not to mock danger but to commune with it, holding live rattlesnakes in their mouths to prove harmony between species. What's startling is how these traditions converge with modern science. Herpetologists now confirm that snakes' infrared vision and seismic sensitivity give them perceptions beyond human limits, almost like they truly do see into other realms. Neurotoxins in their venom have yielded medicines for heart disease and Alzheimer's, echoing ancient beliefs in their healing power. Even their limbless bodies, once seen as cursed, are now recognized as evolutionary masterpieces of adaptation. Perhaps these cultures were onto something deeper than symbolism. When a Maori warrior wears a serpentine greenstone pendant or a Balinese dancer mimics a cobra's sway, they're not just honoring myths, they're acknowledging a truth etched into our collective psyche. The serpent doesn't just represent opposites, it transcends them, reminding us that creation and destruction, healing and poison, earth and sky were never truly separate, just different coils on the same infinite spiral. Birds don't just fly, they bridge worlds, their wings carrying messages between earth and the heavens with effortless grace. Take the raven, black as a moonless night yet shimmering with hidden knowledge. To the Tlingit people of the Pacific Northwest, this clever corvid didn't just find food, it stole the sun itself from a greedy chief, releasing light to the world in a burst of beak and feathers. Meanwhile, across the Atlantic, Norse myths told of Hugin and Munin, Odin's twin ravens, who whispered news from every corner of creation into the god's ears each dusk. What made cultures continents apart see the same bird not as a scavenger, but as a cosmic courier? Perhaps it's the raven's uncanny intelligence, its knack for solving puzzles and mimicking speech traits that made it seem less like a creature and more like a feathered prophet. Then there's the eagle, its piercing gaze mirroring the sun's unblinking stare. The Aztecs believed eagles carried fallen warriors to the house of the sun, their powerful wings beating in time with human hearts. In ancient Rome, an eagle clutching Jupiter's lightning wasn't just a symbol, it was a living omen, its flight patterns scrutinized by augurs to predict the fate of empires. Even today, when a bald eagle soars over an American ceremony, it's not just patriotism at play, it's the echo of a primal recognition that some birds don't just inhabit the sky, they command it. But not all avian messengers roar with power. The dove, soft as a whisper, carried an olive branch to Noah's Ark, its return signaling land and hope after the flood's devastation. In Greek myths, doves pulled Aphrodite's chariot, linking love with gentleness, while Hindu traditions saw them as embodiments of the soul's purity. This contrast, raven versus dove, thunder versus tenderness, reveals a universal truth. Birds became divine messengers not in spite of their diversity, but because of it. Cultures assigned meanings based on each species' unique habits, creating a celestial postal system where every feather bore meaning. The symbolism went deeper than simple metaphors. Many traditions believed birds didn't just carry messages, they were the messages. The Maori interpreted the tui bird's complex songs as ancestors speaking through its voice. Celtic druids tracked the seasonal arrivals of cuckoos to predict harvest fortunes, their calls acting as living almanacs. Even bird flights held coded meanings. A heron flying left might signal misfortune in one culture, while its rightward path promised prosperity in another. This wasn't superstition, it was acute observation honed over generations, where noticing a kingfisher's dive or a hawk's sudden turn could mean survival or starvation. What's astonishing is how these interpretations converged across isolated civilizations. From the thunderbird of Native American legends to Garuda in Hindu epics, giant raptors repeatedly symbolized supreme power. Small songbirds, nightingales, sparrows, wrens, consistently represented love or soulful longing, their delicate frames belying emotional weight. Waterbirds like herons and cranes became symbols of patience and transition, their long legs straddling two elements. These parallels suggest humans weren't just projecting onto birds, they were recognizing an inherent language written in wings and talons, one that transcended geography. Modern science offers fascinating echoes of these ancient beliefs. We now know albatrosses navigate thousands of miles using magnetic fields, an almost supernatural skill that might explain why Polynesians saw them as guides for lost canoes. Crows hold funerals for their dead, a behavior that could have inspired their roles as psychopomps in myths. Even the dove's association with peace gains new resonance when we observe how their gentle cooing lowers stress hormones in humans. Perhaps our ancestors weren't just imagining connections, they were sensing biological truths we're only now beginning to measure. So the next time a jay scolds you from a tree branch or geese arrow across the sunset, pause. You might be witnessing more than nature going about its business. You could be glimpsing the remnants of a sacred dialogue, one where every flutter and cry was a letter from the gods waiting to be read. The wolf's howl doesn't just pierce the night, it echoes through the corridors of human history, a sound that has inspired both awe and dread in equal measure. Consider Fenrir, the monstrous wolf of Norse mythology. whose gaping jaws were prophesied to devour Odin himself during Ragnarök. To the Vikings, he embodied chaos, an unstoppable force that even the gods feared. Yet just a few centuries south, the Romans told a very different story. Their founding myth featured a she-wolf whose gentle milk nourished the abandoned twins Romulus and Remus, her fierce protection ensuring the birth of an empire. How could one creature be seen as both destroyer and nurturer? The answer lies in the wolf's own nature, its duality as both pack hunter and devoted parent, a mirror reflecting humanity's deepest fears and highest ideals. Native American traditions offer yet another perspective, where the wolf wasn't a monster or a mere symbol, but a profound teacher. The Lakota spoke of the wolf as a Shunkmanitu Tanka, or sacred dog of the wilderness, a guide who demonstrated how to balance individuality with community. A lone wolf might survive, but it was the pack that thrived, a lesson in cooperation that shaped tribal governance. Cherokee elders told stories of the wolf's keen senses, urging young hunters to observe as intently as their four-legged mentors. The Nez Perce even wove wolf songs into ceremonies, their melodies mimicking the animal's haunting calls to invoke its wisdom. Unlike European tales that often vilified wolves as villains lurking in dark forests, many indigenous narratives celebrated them as kin, their howls not warnings but conversations with the moon. This cultural split, fear versus reverence, wasn't arbitrary. It grew from the landscapes people shared with wolves. In crowded medieval Europe, where livestock was scarce and winters harsh, wolf attacks on flocks became existential threats, fueling legends of werewolves and demonic hounds. Meanwhile, on the vast plains of North America, where bison herds stretched to the horizon, wolves were seen as partners in the hunt, their strategies admired and emulated. The difference wasn't in the wolves themselves, but in how humans perceived their place in the natural order. Where scarcity bred fear, abundance fostered respect. Even the wolf's spiritual role shifted with time. Early Celtic tribes revered wolves as symbols of warrior spirit, their images etched onto shields and torques. But as Christianity spread, the wolf became a metaphor for heresy or greed. Think of the big bad wolf in fairy tales, a stand-in for societal anxieties. Yet traces of the old reverence lingered. Saint Francis of Assisi famously preached to wolves, and Irish monks wrote of them as guardians of sacred sites. This tension between demonization and veneration reveals a universal truth. The wolf's power lies in its ability to embody whatever we project onto it, a canvas for our collective hopes and nightmares. Modern science has only deepened this mystique. Biologists now confirm what indigenous cultures long understood: wolves are keystone species, their presence shaping entire ecosystems. Where they hunt, rivers meander differently, trees grow taller, and songbirds flourish. Their social structures, with intricate hierarchies and mourning rituals, eerily mirror our own. Perhaps that's why, even today, the sight of a wolf stops us in our tracks. Its golden gaze holds something primal, a reminder of the wildness we've tamed in ourselves but still yearn to reclaim. Whether as Fenrir's fury, Rome's foster mother, or the Lakota's wise elder, the wolf remains more than an animal. It's a story we've been telling ourselves for millennia, one that changes with the teller but always ends the same way, with a howl that stirs something ancient in our bones. The bear's slow, deliberate movements through the forest carried more than just physical weight. They held the gravity of ancient rituals, where every paw print marked a sacred path between worlds. For the Ainu people of Japan, the bear wasn't merely an animal. It was Kami, a divine being who chose to walk the earth in fur and muscle. Their Iomonte ceremony, the ritual sending of a bear's spirit back to the gods, was no simple hunt. A bear cub would be raised by the village, treated as a cherished guest, fed and honored until the day of its ceremonial sacrifice. The Ain, who believed this act released the bear's spirit to return to the mountain kami with gifts from the human world, ensuring balance between realms. Every detail, from the intricate carvings on the ritual sticks to the way the bear's flesh was shared, was a dialogue with the divine, a reminder that life and death were intertwined like the roots of an ancient tree. Meanwhile, across continents and cultures, Celtic druids watched bears emerge from winter dens with the same reverence others reserved for the sunrise. To them, the bear's hibernation wasn't just sleep. It was a journey to the otherworld, a temporary death that mirrored the druidic belief in reincarnation. The bear's ability to vanish for months and return unharmed made it a living symbol of resilience and transformation. Warriors sought its strength, smearing their bodies with bear fat before battle, while healers wore necklaces of bear teeth, believing the animal's vitality could be channeled to cure the sick. The Gauls even had a goddess, Artio, depicted offering fruit to a massive bear, her name echoing the Celtic word for bear itself, proof that the line between deity and beast was often blurred. What's striking is how these traditions, separated by thousands of miles, shared uncanny similarities. The Sami people of Northern Europe held bear graves sacred, arranging the bones with ceremonial care to ensure the animal's rebirth. Native American tribes like the Tlingit and Haida carved totem poles with towering bear figures, their outstretched claws symbolizing protection and ancestral power. Even in ancient Greece, the priestesses of Artemis performed rituals in bear skins, honoring the goddess who ruled wild places and the untamed aspects of womanhood. The bear's physical prowess, its strength, its maternal ferocity certainly inspired awe, but it was the creature's cyclical disappearance and return that truly captivated the human imagination. Hibernation became a metaphor for the soul's journey, a tangible example of nature's promise that darkness always gives way to light. Archaeology confirms how deeply these beliefs ran. From the Paleolithic caves of Europe, where bear skulls were carefully placed on stone altars, to the Neolithic bear-shaped amulets found in the Alps, evidence suggests bear veneration may be one of humanity's oldest spiritual practices. The Finns told of Vainamarinen, a sage who wrestled a bear to gain its wisdom, while the Basque people of Spain danced in bear costumes during festivals, their movements mimicking the animal's grounded power. These weren't just stories or performances, they were acts of devotion, ways to internalize the bear's lessons of patience, renewal, and quiet strength. Modern science offers a fascinating lens on these ancient practices. We now know bears enter a state called torpor, where their metabolism slows dramatically, allowing them to survive months without food. Their bodies recycle waste into nutrients, a biological miracle that might have seemed like magic to early observers. Even the way mother bears nurture their cubs, teaching them to forage, swim, and climb parallels human-child rearing, making the bear an empathetic symbol across cultures. It's no wonder these animals became teachers in myth and medicine, their very existence a masterclass in adaptation. Today, as bear populations decline due to habitat loss, these old rituals take on new urgency. The Ainu still fight to preserve the Iamonte, not as a relic but as a living conversation with nature. Conservationists in Romania invoke the spirit of the Carpathian brown bear to rally protection efforts, while indigenous groups in North America lead campaigns to reintroduce bears to ancestral lands. The bear's legacy, it seems, isn't confined to the past. It's a call to remember that some bonds between human and beast, between the physical and the spiritual, are too profound to vanish with the snow. When a grizzly pauses on a ridge at dusk, its silhouette framed against the fading light, It's not just an animal standing there. It's the embodiment of 1,000 stories, a silent guardian of thresholds we're still learning to cross. The thunder of hooves wasn't just sound, it was the pulse of the divine, a rhythm that carried cultures from this world to the next. Among the Norse, Sleipnir wasn't merely Odin's steed but a cosmic traveler, his 8 legs churning through the 9 realms like spokes on the wheel of existence. This wasn't fantasy, it was theology in motion. A horse that could gallop across sky and underworld alike became the perfect metaphor for a god who sought wisdom in both life and death. Even Sleipnir's birth, born of Loki's shape-shifting trickery, whispered a truth ancient people understood. Horses were liminal beings straddling the line between mundane and magical. Meanwhile, in Vedic hymns, the Ashvin's twin horsemen of the dawn raced their golden chariot across the sky each morning, healing the sick and rescuing the lost. Their hooves didn't just strike the earth, they churned the nectar of immortality itself. Hindus didn't just worship these equine deities, they saw horses as living fire, their speed mirroring Agni's flickering energy. The Ashvamedha, a royal sacrifice where a stallion roamed free for a year before ritual slaughter, wasn't about domination but devotion. Every territory the horse crossed unchallenged marked land blessed by the gods, its eventual sacrifice releasing that sacred energy back into the world. Rome's Equus October reveals how deeply horses bridge the physical and spiritual. Each October, the right-hand horse of a victorious chariot team was speared on the field of Mars, its blood splattering the altar while crowds roared. The tail, still dripping, was rushed to the Regia to mingle with sacred fire, a gruesome act that modern minds might dismiss as barbaric, but peel back the layers and you'll find precision. The left-hand horse, its life spared, became a scapegoat laden with curses before being driven out of the city. This duality, one horse sanctified, one exiled, mirrored Rome's own paradoxes, order and chaos, sacred and profane, all galloping on 4 legs. From the steppes of Mongolia to the plains of Ireland, horse rituals shared uncanny threads. Celtic tribes buried steeds with chieftains, their bones arranged as if mid-gallop into the afterlife. Scythians drank from skull cups fashioned from defeated enemies' horses, believing the animal's strength could be consumed. Even the Bible's 4 horsemen drew power from this universal symbolism. Their mounts weren't just transportation but embodiments of conquest, war, famine, and death itself. What made the horse such a potent spiritual lens? Look to its biology. A horse's eyes, larger than those of any land mammal, reflect the world with eerie clarity, perhaps why so many cultures saw them as seers. Their ability to sleep standing up blurred the line between wakefulness and dreams, as if they existed partially in another realm. And their speed, to ancient eyes, a charging stallion didn't just move fast. It defied the laws of nature, its mane streaming like comet tails across the steppe. Today, echoes of these beliefs linger. In Iceland, folks still whisper of the Nyka, a shape-shifting water horse whose hoof prints vanish at riverbanks. Spanish pilgrims leave bronze horse figurines at Santiago de Compostela, tiny Sleipnirs for modern journeys. And every time a child's rocking horse creaks or a carousel spins, we're replaying an ancient melody, one where hooves beat the rhythm of the sacred, and every gallop carries a whisper of the divine. The cow's gentle eyes have reflected divinity for millennia, not just in the pastures of India, but across continents where early civilizations first harnessed their milk and labor. In Hindu tradition, the cow stands as Kamadhenu, the wish-fulfilling celestial mother whose body contains all gods, whose milk nourishes both body and soul. But journey to the Nile, and you'll find Hathor, the Egyptian cow goddess whose horns cradled the sun itself. Her udders weren't just biological, they were cosmic fountains streaming with the milk that became the Milky Way. This wasn't poetic fancy, it was theology written in the language of survival. When societies transitioned from hunting to herding, the cow's ability to turn grass into protein and plow fields into fertility made it a walking miracle, a four-legged alchemist that transformed the mundane into the sacred. Celtic myths took this reverence further, weaving cows into the very fabric of the otherworld. The legend of the Táin Bó Cúailnge centers on a mythical brown bull whose power could make or break kingdoms, not as livestock but as a sovereign force. Irish druids spoke of Glas Gaebnin, a magical cow whose milk never ran dry, her abundance symbolizing the land's prosperity. Unlike the solitary wolves or bears of warrior cults, cattle represented collective wealth, their value measured in the communal feasts they enabled and the alliances they cemented through gift-giving. A cow's worth wasn't just in its meat or milk, but in its ability to bind people together, a living contract between earth and community. What's striking is how these beliefs emerged independently yet echoed one another. The Mesopotamians worshipped Ninsun, the wild cow of the pen, as a divine intermediary. Greek myths told of Io, transformed into a heifer by Zeus to hide her from Hera's wrath, her wanderings mapping the geography of early trade routes. Even the biblical golden calf, often reduced to a symbol of idolatry, reveals a deeper truth. In a nomadic culture, cattle represented stability, a tangible anchor in an uncertain world. The anger of Moses wasn't just about false gods, it was about mistaking the container for the source, the gift for the giver. Modern archaeology sheds light on why cows occupied this spiritual epicenter. The earliest evidence of cattle domestication in the Fertile Crescent, around 8,000 years ago, coincides with humanity's first permanent settlements. Cows didn't just enable agriculture, they made it scalable. Their manure fertilized crops, their traction expanded farmland, and their milk provided a steady protein source that allowed populations to boom. This symbiosis wasn't lost on ancient observers. It was nothing short of divine partnership. The Zoroastrians even codified this in their creation myth, where the primordial ox Gavivoda's sacrifice gave rise to all plants and animals, framing cattle as the literal building blocks of life. Today, as industrial farming distances us from these ancient bonds, the old beliefs resurface in unexpected ways. Spanish bull runs and Swiss cow fights preserve fragments of bovine veneration as spectacle. Indian protests against beef consumption aren't just political, they're cultural memory asserting that some relationships transcend utility. Even the term sacred cow in modern parlance carries a whisper of this history, reminding us that some truths are too foundational to challenge. When a dairy farmer in the Alps still blesses his herd each spring, or a Rajasthani villager paints a cow's hoof prints on her doorway for protection, they're not performing empty rituals. They're honoring a contract written in milk and marrow, one that says civilization didn't rise despite nature, it flourished because of it. Beneath the shimmering surface of rivers and oceans, fish carried more than just water. They held entire cosmologies in their flickering scales. In the Fertile Crescent of Mesopotamia, where the Tigris and Euphrates rivers birthed civilization, fish weren't just food, they were emblems of life itself. The god Ons, depicted as a bearded man cloaked in a fish's body, emerged daily from the Persian Gulf to teach humanity the arts of writing, agriculture, and law before returning to the depths at dusk. This wasn't just myth-making, it was a profound acknowledgement of water's generative power. In a land where crops flourished or failed based on river floods, the fish's ability to thrive in these life-giving currents made it a living symbol of abundance. Babylonian terracotta plaques show priestesses offering fish to Ishtar, their rippling forms echoing the goddess's dual domain over both war and fertility, a reminder that creation and destruction often swim in the same waters. Early Christians huddled in Roman catacombs saw something even more radical in the fish's silent glide. The ichthys, two simple arcs meeting to form a fish, became a clandestine emblem of faith, scratched onto walls and whispered as an acronym: Isus Christos Thea Uios Soter, Jesus Christ, Son of God, Savior. At a time when professing Christianity could mean death, the fish was the perfect cipher. To outsiders, it might look like a mundane market symbol or a doodle. To believers, it signaled safe harbor. But the symbolism ran deeper. Just as fish moved unseen through dark waters, so too did early Christians navigate persecution hidden yet purposeful. And when Jesus called his disciples to become fishers of men, he tapped into an ancient understanding. That water wasn't just a place of danger, but of transformation, where nets could haul up unexpected redemption. Across the Pacific, Maori legends spoke of Tinarau, a half-fish deity whose sacred whale, Tutunui, was slain by the trickster Ki. The story wasn't just a cautionary tale, it encoded ecological wisdom. Tinarau's grief mirrored the consequences of overharvesting, while the whale's bones, carved into hooks, became tools for sustainable fishing, a divine paradox where loss yielded practical reverence. Similarly, in Japan, the koi's arduous upstream struggle symbolized perseverance, its eventual transformation into a dragon revealing how hardship could morph into transcendence. Even the zodiac's Pisces, two fish bound by a cord, reflected this duality, tied together yet swimming in opposite directions, embodying both unity and tension. What's striking is how these aquatic symbols transcended geography. Hindu texts describe the Matsya avatar, where Vishnu takes fish form to save humanity's ancestors from a cosmic deluge, a story that eerily parallels Mesopotamian flood myths. Norse myths told of the Midgard serpent, Jörmungandr, coiled so deep in the ocean it bit its own tail, its scales marking the boundary between order and chaos. From the Inuit tales of Sedna, whose severed fingers became seals and whales, to the West African Mami water spirits riding the waves with serpentine grace, water creatures consistently embodied thresholds between life and death, chaos and creation, the seen and unseen. Modern science offers a poignant postscript to these ancient intuitions. Marine biologists now confirm that fish migrations, salmon returning upstream, eels vanishing into the Sargasso Sea are among nature's most precise navigational feats, guided by magnetic fields we're only beginning to understand. Coral reefs teeming with symbiotic life mirror the interconnectedness that myths once ascribed to divine waters. Perhaps our ancestors, watching silver shoals flicker beneath the surface, sensed what we now quantify. That water isn't just a resource, but a realm of endless mystery, where every fin and gill whispers secrets we're still learning to decode. The next time you glimpse a fish's fleeting shadow in a stream, remember, you're not just seeing an animal, you're witnessing the ripple of 1,000 stories, each one diving deeper than the last. The dog's unwavering loyalty has always been more than just companionship. It's a bridge between worlds, a trait ancient cultures recognized in their myths and rituals. In Egypt, Anubis didn't simply wear the jackal's head as a mask. His very essence was intertwined with the creature's instincts. Jackals were often spotted prowling the edges of deserts where Egyptians buried their dead, their keen noses leading them unerringly to graves. Instead of fearing these scavengers, the Egyptians saw divine purpose. If jackals could navigate the realm of death so effortlessly, surely they could guide human souls through the afterlife's treacherous paths. Anubis's role wasn't symbolic, it was functional. His jackal form wasn't just a representation of death, it was a practical tool for navigating it, his sharp senses weighing hearts against the feather of mat with canine precision. Meanwhile, across the Mediterranean, Greek myths painted dogs as both guardians and gatekeepers. Cerberus, the three-headed hound of Hades, wasn't merely a monster blocking the underworld's entrance. He was a meticulous bouncer, ensuring only the dead crossed the threshold while preventing any unauthorized exits. Yet in the same breath, the Greeks told of healing dogs licking wounds in the temples of Asclepius, their saliva believed to carry curative powers. This duality, ferocity and tenderness, mirrored the dog's own nature, a protector of homes who could also sense illness in its human companions long before symptoms appeared. The Aztecs took this paradox further with Zoroastrianism, the hairless dog whose warm skin made it a living heating pad for the sick and a spiritual escort for the dead. These dogs weren't just pets, they were funeral necessities. Buried alongside their owners, they were tasked with guiding souls across the 9 rivers of Mictlan, the Aztec underworld. Their hairlessness wasn't an accident, it made them eerily reminiscent of the newly deceased, their smooth skin a mirror of the soul's stripped-down essence. Modern excavations confirm this reverence. Zolo skeletons are often found curled beside human remains, their bodies positioned as if mid-journey. Celtic traditions offered a different twist, where dogs were less psychopomps and more healers. The goddess Nehelenia was often depicted with a hound at her side, its presence symbolizing not just protection but rejuvenation. Legends spoke of enchanted dogs whose licks could cure blindness or whose howls could ward off evil spirits. In Ireland, the hero Cuchulainn earned his name, Hound of Culan, after taking the place of a slain guard dog, his life forever bound to the animal's loyalty and ferocity. Here, dogs weren't just guides to the afterlife, they were anchors to this world, their vitality a counterbalance to death's pull. What explains this universal ambivalence? Perhaps it's the dog's unique position in human history, the first domesticated animal, sharing our fires for over 15,000 years. Its ability to guard thresholds, both physical and spiritual, stems from this ancient partnership. Dogs don't just observe, they anticipate. They sense storms before clouds gather, detect seizures before they strike, and grieve alongside us at funerals. Ancient peoples, lacking scientific explanations, interpreted these traits as otherworldly. A dog's howl at midnight wasn't just noise, it was a warning of unseen dangers. Its refusal to cross certain paths wasn't stubbornness but clairvoyance. Modern discoveries add eerie resonance to these old beliefs. Studies show dogs can detect cancers and predict diabetic crashes with uncanny accuracy, their noses discerning biochemical changes imperceptible to machines. Their mournful behavior around dying owners documented in nursing homes suggests an awareness of death's approach that science can't yet fully explain. Maybe our ancestors were onto something. When a chihuahua trembles at empty air or a retriever barks at a shadowy corner, we're glimpsing the same intuition that once made dogs indispensable guides to the unknown. The line between guardian and psychopomp was never clear because in the end, every dog straddles both roles, standing watch at the threshold between what we know and what we can only sense. The elephant's immense presence has always commanded more than just physical space. It occupies a sacred realm where strength and serenity intertwine. In Hindu tradition, Ganesha's elephant head isn't just an oddity, it's a masterclass in divine paradox. His large ears symbolize the wisdom of listening, while his small eyes remind devotees to focus inward despite life's distractions. The broken tusk he holds like a pen speaks volumes. Here's a deity who sacrificed part of himself to transcribe the Mahabharata, turning limitation into creative force. But Ganesha's form isn't just symbolic, it's ecological theology in action. elephants, with their matriarchal herds and lifelong bonds, model the communal values Hinduism reveres. When a temple elephant lifts its trunk to bless devotees, it's not performing a trick. It's embodying a truth ancient Indians observed in the wild, that these giants nurture their young, mourn their dead, and remember pathways across generations, making them living embodiments of Dharma's cyclical nature. Buddhist traditions elevate the elephant differently, yet just as profoundly. Queen Maya's dream of a white elephant entering her side before Siddhartha's birth wasn't random imagery. It encapsulated the animal's dual significance in Asian thought. White elephants, rare in nature, were seen as celestial beings in earthly form, their purity reflecting the Buddha's untarnished enlightenment. In Thailand, they weren't merely royal property but Chang Samkhan, sacred creatures whose appearance could bless or challenge a kingdom's fortune. The Jataka tales go further, recounting the Buddha's past lives as a compassionate elephant who offered his own flesh to feed starving travelers, framing the animal as the ultimate bodhisattva, one who endures suffering to alleviate others. Rituals surrounding elephants reveal how deeply these beliefs permeated daily life. In Kerala's Trisha Puram festival, caparisoned elephants carried deities through roaring crowds, their foreheads painted with intricate designs that transform them into moving temples. The careful training of temple elephants, never called training but gurukula, akin to spiritual education, reflects this reverence. Their mahouts aren't just handlers but lifelong companions, their bond echoing the Hindu concept of seva, selfless service. Meanwhile, in Laos, the annual Baon Bang Phai Rocket Festival includes elephant processions where the animals are adorned with floral mosaics, their slow, deliberate movements mirroring the Buddhist ideal of mindful presence. Archaeology unveils even older layers of this veneration. The Indus Valley Civilization seals, etched with elephant motifs dating back to 2500 BCE, suggest Proto-Ganesha worship millennia before the Puranic texts. Ashoka's edicts, carved onto pillars topped with elephant capitals, didn't just celebrate his conversion to Buddhism, they signaled a shift from seeing elephants as war machines to ambassadors of peace. Even the Mughals, despite their Islamic faith, retained Hindu traditions of gifting temple elephants as diplomatic gestures, recognizing their cross-cultural sacred currency. Modern science lends startling credence to these ancient intuitions. We now know elephants possess self-awareness, problem-solving skills, and complex emotional lives, traits that make Ganesha's association with wisdom eerily prescient. Their infrasound communication, once interpreted as silent prayers, does indeed connect herds across vast distances, much like divine omens bridging heaven and earth. Conservationists in Thailand have even documented ritual-like behavior in wild elephants, including burial practices and apparent mourning ceremonies, observations that blur the line between cultural projection and biological reality. What emerges isn't just a history of animal symbolism, but a dialogue. When a Sri Lankan devotee whispers prayers to a temple elephant or a Cambodian monk sweeps the ground where one walked, they're participating in a tradition that recognizes what Western science only recently confirmed, that elephants aren't just metaphors for divinity, but kin who move through the world with a gravity and grace we're still struggling to comprehend. Their sacred status wasn't arbitrary, it was earned, one mindful step at a time. The lion's roar didn't just echo across savannas, it reverberated through the collective imagination of ancient civilizations, its golden mane shimmering like a crown in the sun. In Egypt, the Great Sphinx's leonine body fused with a pharaoh's face wasn't just artistry, it was divine calculus. The lion embodied the sun god Ra's unyielding power, its daily hunt mirroring Ra's journey across the sky, vanquishing chaos with each stride. Meanwhile, the goddess Sekhmet, her lioness head dripping with the blood of enemies, wasn't merely a destroyer, she was a healer in disguise. Her priests brewed beer stained red like blood to appease her, transforming her fury into protection. This duality, ferocity and guardianship, wasn't accidental. Egyptians observed how lionesses hunted while males guarded the pride, mapping these roles onto their pantheon, strength as both sword and shield. Venture east to Mesopotamia, and Ishtar's lion-headed iconography took on a different hue. Here, the lion wasn't just a symbol of raw power, but of sovereignty intertwined with fertility. Ishtar's lions pulled her chariot into battle, yet their mouths cradled doves, a startling juxtaposition of war and life-giving energy. Babylonian kings carved lions into their throne room walls, not just to intimidate but to channel the animal's sacred authority. When a ruler sat enthroned between two stone lions, it wasn't theater. It was a ritual alignment, positioning himself as the hinge between human and divine order. Christianity later inherited this regal symbolism but infused it with resurrection theology. The Lion of Judah in the Book of Revelation wasn't chosen at random. Early Christians knew the lion was said to sleep with its eyes open, a trait they reinterpreted as Christ's vigilant watch over death before the resurrection. Medieval bestiaries expanded the myth, claiming lion cubs were born lifeless until their father's roar breathed life into them, a perfect metaphor for spiritual rebirth. Even C.S. Lewis's Aslan, millennia later, drew from this deep well, his sacrificial return echoing ancient beliefs that the lion's strength was measured not in claws but in surrender. What threads connect these disparate traditions start with biology. A lion's mane, unique among big cats, radiates like a solar halo, cementing its link to sun deities across cultures. Its thunderous roar, audible for miles, became the voice of gods announcing their presence. But the deeper truth lies in the lion's ecological role as an apex predator that rarely hunts. Its mere presence maintains balance. Ancient peoples intuited this. The lion wasn't revered for killing, but for the order its existence imposed, making it the ultimate metaphor for righteous authority. Modern wildlife science adds eerie resonance. Lions are one of the few cats that live in structured social groups, their prides reflecting human tribal bonds. Their cooperative hunting strategies mirror ancient military tactics, while their grooming rituals parallel communal care systems. Perhaps our ancestors saw in lions not just gods, but mirrors, a reflection of the power structures they aspired to, where strength served the collective. The next time you see a lion statue guarding a courthouse or a cathedral, remember, it's not just decoration. It's the echo of a time when humanity saw divinity not just in the stars, but in the golden gaze of the Earth's most majestic hunter. The rabbit's delicate silhouette appears etched onto the face of the moon in cultures separated by oceans and centuries, a celestial inkblot test revealing humanity's shared fascination with these creatures' otherworldly charm. The Maya didn't just see a random pattern in the lunar shadows. They envisioned the moon goddess Ixchel cradling a rabbit, its gentle presence softening her nocturnal dominion. This wasn't whimsy but profound observation. Just as the moon waxes and wanes, rabbits vanish into burrows and reappear with uncanny suddenness, their populations swelling and receding like lunar tide. Their reproductive prowess, so startling to agricultural societies, mirrored the moon's cyclical renewal, making them living symbols of fertility and resurrection. China's jade rabbit, pounding the elixir of immortality in its moon mortar, adds another layer to this cosmic connection. Ancient astronomers noticed that rabbits, like the moon, are most active at twilight, their silhouettes bounding through fields as the crescent first gleams. But the rabbit's true magic lay in its physiology. Its seemingly ceaseless chewing was interpreted as grinding medicinal herbs, while its ability to thrive despite predators mirrored the moon's resilience against the void of space. Taoist alchemists even linked the creature's prolific breeding to the moon's phases, seeing in each new litter a reflection of the lunar rebirth. Aztec myths took this further, with Quetzalcoatl placing a rabbit on the moon after the creature offered itself as food to save humanity, an act of sacrifice that forever tied its image to divine generosity. Meanwhile, Buddhist Jataka tales describe the Buddha in a past life as a rabbit who leaped into a fire to feed a starving sage, its body appearing on the moon as a celestial memorial. These aren't just charming fables, they're ethical blueprints using the rabbit's vulnerability to teach compassion. The science behind these myths is equally compelling. Rabbits' eyes contain a tapetum lucidum, reflecting light with an eerie glow that might explain their nocturnal mystique. Their foot thumps audible over remarkable distances could have been interpreted as messages to the lunar sphere. Even their famous fertility has a biological basis. Female rabbits can conceive a second litter while still pregnant with the first, a phenomenon called superfetation that ancient observers would have deemed miraculous. What emerges is more than coincidence, it's a global language of symbols. From the Algonquin's great moon rabbit to the Korean moon rabbit weaving robes of immortality, these stories reveal how cultures projected their deepest hopes onto the lunar canvas. The rabbit wasn't just a resident of the moon, it was the moon's beating heart, a soft-furred reminder that even in the coldest reaches of the cosmos, life finds a way to multiply and endure. The fox's flickering silhouette at the forest's edge has long been more than just an animal, it's a shapeshifter of meaning, embodying wildly different truths depending on who's watching. In Japan's misty shrine pathways, the kitsune isn't merely a creature but a divine agent, its 9 tails swirling with the wisdom of centuries. These foxes serve Inari, the god of rice and prosperity, their white fur glowing like moonlight as they dart between the physical and spiritual realms. Far from mere tricksters, they're guardians of thresholds, their presence signaling both bounty and consequence. A farmer might leave fried tofu at a shrine to honor them, knowing a pleased kitsune could bless the harvest, while a disrespectful merchant might find his ledgers mysteriously altered overnight. This duality, benevolent yet mischievous, reflects Shinto's broader worldview, that the sacred isn't always solemn, and playfulness can be its own form of devotion. Cross continents to medieval Europe, and the fox's role twists into something darker. Here, Reynard the fox slinks through fables as a silver-tongued con artist, outwitting lumbering bears and vain wolves with sarcastic glee. His cunning isn't celebrated but feared, a reflection of agrarian societies where survival hinged on outsmarting both predators and feudal lords. When Chaucer describes a fox carrying off a rooster in the Canterbury Tales, it's not just a barnyard mishap, it's a parable about the fragility of order, where the weak, like the fox, exploit the complacent, like the rooster. Unlike Japan's divine messengers, Europe's foxes became symbols of chaos, their red coats burning like warning flags against deception in a world where trust was already scarce. Yet dig deeper, and these contrasts reveal shared human fascinations. Both traditions recognize the fox's uncanny intelligence, its ability to vanish like mist, its knack for thriving at civilization's edges. The Ainu of northern Japan, much like their European counterparts, told tales of foxes stealing human forms to marry unsuspecting villagers, blurring the line between beast and person. Meanwhile, Celtic druids saw foxes as guides to the otherworld, their russet fur mirroring autumn's liminal glow. Even the Bible's little foxes that spoil the vine's Song of Solomon 2:15 hint at a universal truth, that small, sharp minds can unravel carefully tended systems. What's most revealing is how these stories evolved alongside human anxieties. As Japan urbanized during the Edo period, kitsune legends grew more elaborate, their magic reflecting the tensions between tradition and modernity. A samurai might blame a kitsune's illusion for his gambling losses, while a geisha's sudden fortune could be attributed to fox possession. In Europe, the rise of Christianity demonized the fox further, associating its slyness with Satan's wiles, a far cry from Inari's revered messengers. Modern science adds a poignant layer to these myths. Researchers now confirm foxes possess remarkable problem-solving skills, even using Earth's magnetic field to triangulate prey, an ability that might explain their supernatural reputation for precision. Their vocalizations range from eerie screams to chuckles, fueling tales of ghostly laughter in the dark. Perhaps our ancestors weren't entirely wrong to see something otherworldly in those amber eyes. Today, the fox's legacy still dances between reverence and caution. In Tokyo's bustling Shibuya district, businessmen pocket tiny fox charms for luck, while British parents read fantastic Mr. Fox to their children, celebrating cleverness without consequence. The difference in tone isn't just cultural, it's a reminder that how we narrate the fox's story reflects how we narrate our own. Is intelligence a gift to honor or a weapon to fear? The answer, it seems, depends on whether you're leaving offerings at a shrine or boarding up the henhouse. The deer's quiet grace has always carried a whisper of the sacred, its delicate steps leaving traces not just in the forest but in the spiritual imagination of civilizations. In Greece, Artemis wasn't merely a huntress with a bow, she was the protector of wild things, her silver chariot pulled by golden-horned stags as if the moon itself had taken animal form. To kill a deer in her sacred groves was an act of sacrilege punishable by madness, as the myth of Actaeon tragically reveals the hunter torn apart by his own hounds after glimpsing the goddess bathing. This wasn't just a cautionary tale, it was a boundary marker declaring deer as living extensions of Artemis's untamable divinity. Cross the misty highlands to Celtic lands, and the stag's branching antlers became a map of the cosmos. The god Cernunnos, often depicted seated cross-legged with antlers crowning his head, wasn't just a lord of animals but a conduit between worlds. His antlers, shedding and regrowing with the seasons, mirrored the cyclical rebirth of nature, a visual hymn to the idea that endings were merely preludes. Celtic artisans wove stag motifs into torques and shields, their sinuous curves mimicking the way a buck's antlers catch the first light of dawn. Even the legendary warrior Fionn mac Cumhaill gained wisdom not from scholars but from the salmon of knowledge, which itself had fed on hazelnuts dropped by a mystical white stag. This reverence wasn't confined to Europe. In Japan's Shinto traditions, deer were considered messengers of the gods, their presence in places like Nara's Kasuga shrine so sacred that harming one carried the death penalty well into the 19th century. The Sika deer wandering those temple grounds today aren't just wildlife, they're living relics of a belief that divinity wears a tawny coat and watches with liquid brown eyes. Meanwhile, in the Americas, the Cherokee told of the Actina, a horned serpent whose antlers held celestial knowledge, while the Pueblo peoples included deer dancers in their rituals, their movements imitating the animal's agility to channel its life-giving energy. Artifacts reveal how deeply these beliefs ran. The 17,000-year-old cave paintings at Lascaux immortalize stags with the same reverence as human figures, their ochre outlines pulsing with vitality. Byzantine mosaics depict deer kneeling at streams, their thirst symbolizing the soul's yearning for spiritual nourishment. Persian miniatures show royal hunts where the stag's pursuit isn't just sport but a metaphor for the soul's journey, echoed centuries later in medieval Christian bestiaries. that described how stags could draw serpents from their dens with their breath, just as Christ vanquished evil. What made the deer such a universal canvas for sacred ideas? Start with its biology. A stag's antlers, the fastest-growing tissue in the animal kingdom, are regenerative marvels, nature's promise that loss can be followed by renewal. Their seasonal disappearance and return sync with solstices and equinoxes, making them living calendars for agrarian societies. Even their behavior played a role. The stag's alertness, its ability to vanish soundlessly into thickets, lent it an air of otherworldly awareness. Modern ecology offers a poignant footnote to these ancient intuitions. Deer are now recognized as ecosystem engineers, their grazing patterns shaping forests much as their symbolism once shaped cultures. The next time you see a deer pause at the edge of a clearing, consider this. You're not just observing an animal, you're witnessing the flicker of a 1,000-year-old conversation between humanity and the wild, one where hooves left prints not just in soil, but in the very architecture of belief. The ink-staining skin today carries whispers of millennia-old reverence. A tattooed wolf on a bicep isn't just body art, but a silent invocation of ancestral strength. Walk into any tattoo parlor, and you'll find sleeves blooming with koi fish swimming upstream, their scales shimmering with the same determination that inspired Japanese legends of transformation. A hummingbird inked behind an ear echoes Aztec warriors who believed these tiny birds carried fallen souls to the sun. This isn't trend hopping, it's modern skin stitching itself to ancient stories, wearing animal totems as armor against a disconnected world. Even corporate offices aren't immune. The fox tattoo peeking from a lawyer's cuff isn't just whimsy but a nod to the kitsune's cunning, a private reminder that wisdom wears many disguises. Literature, too, pulses with these old bonds. Philip Pullman's His Dark Materials didn't invent demons, it resurrected the shamanic concept of spirit companions, giving physical form to the soul's wild essence. In Where the Crawdads Sing, the marsh isn't just setting but a character. It's herons and fireflies standing in for the divine presence indigenous cultures once saw in wetlands. Even children's books like The Wolf Wilder recast wolves not as villains but as kin, echoing Native American narratives erased by colonial fear-mongering. These stories do more than entertain, they rewire collective memory, replacing centuries of demonization with older, truer myths. Eco-spirituality takes this further, turning reverence into revolution. When activists chain themselves to old growth trees or blockade whaling ships, they're not just protesting, they're enacting rituals as old as the Celts who believed forests housed gods. The Great Barrier Reef isn't just an ecosystem to Indigenous Australians. It's the rainbow serpent's living body. It's bleaching a spiritual emergency as much as an environmental one. Scientists now collaborate with Maori elders, using traditional knowledge of whale migrations to bolster conservation data, proving that ancient tracking isn't folklore but precision science disguised as myth. Perhaps most strikingly, psychology has reclaimed these bonds through spirit-animal meditations. Though watered down by pop culture, the core remains. A wolf appearing in a guided visualization isn't escapism but archetypal therapy, tapping into what Carl Jung called the collective unconscious. Trauma survivors working with equine therapists or veterans finding peace in falconry aren't just healing. They're rediscovering what the Lakota never forgot. That animals speak a language older than words, one that bypasses brokenness to mend the soul directly. What binds these modern expressions isn't nostalgia but necessity. In a world of climate collapse and digital overload, ancient animal wisdom offers a lifeline, not backward toward primitivism, but forward to a future where technology and tradition entwine like serpents on a caduceus. The next time you see a teenager with a stag tattoo or a CEO quoting the wisdom of eagles in a boardroom, look closer. These aren't fads, they're the quiet resurgence of a truth we're finally relearning, that feathers, fur, and fins were never just resources. They're revelations waiting to be read anew. The sacred bond between animals and ancient spirits isn't just a relic of the past, it's a mirror reflecting our deepest longing to belong to a world alive with meaning. Every culture, from the deserts of Egypt to the rainforests of the Amazon, wove creatures into their creation stories not as footnotes, but as co-authors of existence. This wasn't primitive superstition. It was an acknowledgement that the flutter of a wing or the rumble of a predator's growl carried whispers of something greater. The Egyptian who bowed to a scarab beetle rolling dung saw the sun's journey. The Inuit hunter who thanked the seal's spirit before a meal understood the sacred exchange of life for life. These traditions shared a radical idea that divinity wasn't confined to temples or texts. It pulsed in the veins of the wild, waiting to be recognized. Today, as we face climate crises and mass extinctions, these ancient perspectives feel less like mythology and more like urgent wisdom. The Lakota phrase, "Mitakui Oyasin," all my relations, didn't just include humans. It embraced the four-legged, the winged, the rooted. Modern ecology confirms what indigenous cultures always knew, that wolves regulate rivers, elephants engineer forests, and whales stir the ocean's nutrients. Science now gives us data, but the heartbeat behind it, the interconnectedness, was mapped in animal myths millennia ago. When a Maori elder speaks of the Taniwa, a guardian spirit in water dragon form, they're not denying hydrology, they're insisting that rivers deserve reverence, not just exploitation. So how do we honor these teachings now? It starts with small, intentional acts. Planting a garden with native flowers becomes an offering to the bees, modern descendants of the sacred pollinators once honored by the Maya. Choosing sustainable seafood echoes the Hawaiian kapu system, which let fish populations replenish by declaring certain reefs off limits. Even the simple act of pausing when a raven calls, wondering what message might ride on its croak, reconnects us to that old, instinctive listening. You don't need to wear a wolf pendant or chant to animal gods unless you want to. Sometimes it's enough to watch a spider spin its web and remember, Anansi the trickster taught that stories, like silk, can weave worlds together. This video isn't just about history, it's an invitation. The next time you feel the weight of the modern world, the screens, the noise, the rush, step outside. Let the first squirrel you see chattering on a fence post remind you of the Celtic belief that animals carry otherworldly secrets. Let the neighborhood cats slinking through shadows channel a little of Bastet's protective energy. The old bonds aren't broken, they're waiting to be remembered, one mindful encounter at a time. So tell us in the comments, what creature makes you feel that flicker of connection? A dragonfly's iridescent flash, the steady gaze of a deer at dusk. Your story might be the next thread in this ancient, ever-unfolding tapestry. Don't forget to subscribe, because history's mysteries aren't just about the past. They're about the wild, whispering world we're all still learning